Welcome, everybody. Today on Streets and Eats, we are going to be talking about a recent trip we took to Japan.
Real recent.
Very recent.
We just got back.
And giving everybody an update and some tips on what travel to and in Japan is like nowadays.
Post-pandemic.
This is episode 55. And today we're talking about Japan travel tips for 2023 and beyond. Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries and all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure.
That's right. So we went to Japan because, we weren't planning on going to Japan. As you know, we lived there for 5 years. Right. It's not some place that we really planned on spending money going, as our income has decreased as retirees, because we've already been there. We live there. We've done a lot there.
It's kind of an expensive place too.
And it's kind of pricey, yeah. But the kids, Erica and Michael and Aster, were all going there for the holidays, and they tried talking us into going, and we said no. We're not going there.
Somewhere new.
If we go somewhere, we're going to go somewhere we haven't been. Spend our money wisely. Well, that was until our visa snafu here in Vietnam happened.
Well, we were hoping to come and be able to get right onto a long-term visa through Erica's work, through her school. As family members, which was something that they had said we could do, no problem. Of course, when we got here, things have changed. Things have been changing in Vietnam very rapidly over the last year with visas anyway. And I think this is one of those areas where a change happened and we can no longer get that long term right away. But what they could do was get us a 3-month that we could pick up out of country, come back.
We actually had no choice. We had to leave the country.
Out of country. Once we come back, now we can get a 6-month. And then that 6 month, hopefully, if things don't change again, we can renew and keep renewing the 6-month. So it's kind of long term. We don't have to do the 30-day.
Which is wonderful. And that's the only thing tourists can get is a 30-day visa to Vietnam.
Yeah. So we had to go out of the country to get this visa. And we thought, well, Japan's pretty organized. They're known for their politeness, their infrastructure. We thought of all the countries, that should be a good one.
And we know it. And the kids were going there. So we said, okay.
Yeah.
We'll go to Japan.
Do love it. And yeah, while we did say it's not someplace we intended to go back to right away, I could always go to Japan and really enjoy it. Because
we love Japan.
So that's what we did. We had to go. We had everything set up through the system here so that we could pick up that visa. It was not nearly as easy as we thought it would be, but we did manage to get it and it worked out okay.
It really wasn't that bad. It's just that there was a waiting period. We had to wait, I think it was 20 days.
Yeah.
And so we had found this out. We went ahead and made our Japanese reservations, got our airline tickets and all that. And then we had another problem with the visa. So that set us back and we had to extend. So we ended up staying in Japan like 2.5 weeks in order for us to go to the embassy on the day that they mandated that we go and pick up our visa. And it all worked out in the long run.
And while... yes, Japan is a very orderly country and infrastructure is great. We were going to the Vietnam embassy and it was a lot like walking into Vietnam. So it was an experience, a culture experience within Japan that we were not expecting. And it all worked out.
It worked out just fine. And so here we are, fat and happy with our 90-day visas for Vietnam, which are multiple entry. And like we said, we should not have to leave the country again to pick up a visa in another country again. We should not have to. We will see how that works. It seems that things change, so we never know. Anyway, so what did we do? We went to Japan, and if you followed us at all, you know that Jim and I love the countryside, and we love going to all the wonderful sort of backcountry places in Japan. And we haven't really spent a lot of time doing just Tokyo. We've been to Tokyo hundreds of times.
We always do something when we're there.
And we always do something, and we have a blast. But for this trip, we decided, we've been to a lot of the backcountry places. Let's just concentrate on Tokyo. And that's where the kids were staying anyway. Now, we made our reservations completely different than Erica and Michael. So they ended up staying in Shinjuku. Mm-hmm. And we could not get reservations at their hotel or anything anywhere close to it. So we end up finding a hotel near Kanda. Mm-hmm. And that worked out good. It's just that, we had to meet them in the morning, and we had to sort of plan what we were doing. Of course, if this is a regular trip and we were all going together, we would stay in the same hotel. That goes without saying. But for planning purposes, you definitely want to find hotels that give you some amenities. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to start off this podcast with you're arriving. You're in Narita or Haneda, and this is what you do.
Yeah. Things have changed, really, from when we lived there. And with the pandemic, big changes happened. And in fact, they opened back up in October.
They just opened October, I think 11th.
And we were originally
2022.
Yeah. And we were originally scheduled to fly through Japan on our way to Vietnam back in October. And so we had to run through the whole process of what it takes to enter Japan and do all that. So I thought I knew what to do. When it came time for this trip and I got everything set up, things had already changed.
So
it was a new system that you had to do.
The moral of the story here is we can tell you how it was in December of 2022.
Right.
And it's strict, by the way, very strict.
Yes.
But it may again change. I mean, we're still not sure how this whole COVID thing is going to play out. I mean, it's still around. So they may change again, although it's pretty strict right now. So I think the chances are slimmer.
Yeah. And I kind of got the sense that when it opened up in October, that they just kind of quickly got something together.
And now they've refined
knowing that this other thing was going to be the plan going forward. So it's not difficult to do. You do need to do it all ahead of time. And like you said, things change constantly. And with China opening up, that could make changes for Japan and other countries as well.
You never know. I don't know that you have to do it. It says you're supposed to go to the app before, but I think there were people who didn't, and they still get in. It just will take you a lot longer.
Yes.
And it already takes a long time. So we suggest you make sure you do it ahead of time. So go ahead and describe what we have to do.
Okay. So before you even start packing, you want to go on the website and get everything set up so that when you arrive in Japan, you can enter through all the different stages as easily and smoothly as possible. And to do that, you go to the Visit Japan website.
This is all because of COVID.
Right.
Basically, they want proof that you've had vaccinations. If you do not have your vaccinations with 2 boosters, I believe it is, you will not get entry into Japan.
No,
so first
you
of
can,
all,
but you'll need to quarantine.
Oh, you'll need to quarantine.
Right.
So this is why you need to do all this beforehand, and maybe you need to go get that second booster, and that will help you. So this is all good information for you to prepare for your trip to Japan, and you can do it a month in advance whenever you have your tickets. Yeah. But you want to make sure that you do it because we'll explain later about how long the lines and stuff were, but it's all because of COVID. So if you're not someone who was interested in getting vaccinations, just plan on doing your quarantine.
If you want to travel to Japan,
that's right.
Get some vaccinations. And if you haven't done it at all, then you're really behind schedule, and you better do this way ahead of time, because there's the big wait in between the vaccine shots.
They require...
It's going to take you 2 months, I think, at least, to get maybe 3 months to get enough shots and boosters before you can enter the country.
I think children 6 and under are exempt from that. Is that correct?
I think that was 6 and under.
Again, you want to check. It's on there. So just double check with that.
So the Visit Japan website, It was pretty easy to navigate. You will need to take photos of your COVID vaccination cards. You'll need your flight information. So this is something you're going to do after you've scheduled your flight. And there's different
photos of your passport.
And there's a couple of different stages that you go through when you arrive. And you can use the Visit Japan website to make those stages easier. So the first one is health. You're going to go through the COVID check. And if you've got that QR code, you just breeze right on through. The next stage is customs. And in the past, what you had to do when you arrived in Japan, everybody had to fill out this little card. Usually they gave it to you on the airplane. And if they didn't, it was a big scramble to find one in the airport. Now you can do that on Visit Japan Web, which I think was like one of the biggest things to save time. And you get that card filled out digitally. You don't have to worry about it. And you show it as you're coming into customs. And then the third one is for departure. You just have your departure ready for when you're leaving. Really easy to do. The big thing is on the website, it tells you to take screenshots. So you have screenshots in case something's going wrong with your phone. Well, we did that. We had screenshots ready. And in fact, there's a lot of other people on the plane with us that were coming in with printed pages of all their QR codes.
That's right.
No, that
like
did
tour
not work.
groups.
Yeah, that did not work. As soon as you got off the plane and got to the line for the first stage,
it was a huge line.
They wanted to see it on your phone on the website. And the line was long because so many people like us had just had screenshots, or so many people hadn't done it at all.
We don't know what they were doing. All we know is we did it. We've got screenshots. We go right to the front of the line. And the guy's like, oh, no. Step right over here. So he pulls us over to the wall and he says, you need to pull up the website. So right there, the screenshot didn't work, even though that's what it suggests to do on the website. That may change, and maybe eventually that will be good enough. But I think they've had too many people who have not done it correctly.
Yeah. So be ready. And I mean, the good news is there's free Wi-Fi in the airport that's right there as soon as you land.
They'll help you.
And
there's lots of people
run through the process. But again, if you do it before time, have it ready. I had a tab open on my, I think I had that one on Safari or Google. It doesn't really matter which one you have it open on. So as soon as we connected back to the website, or as soon as we connected to the Wi-Fi, I opened up that page and refreshed it and it reloaded. I just had to sign in again and then everything was ready.
So then we go through that line. He lets us through. And the next thing is the health. And this is a long, huge hall. And we're on this, Japan is very organized. So they've got us on this path and they put us on this one path, not the other path. The path that we were on, because we had the website and we had done it, and we had our vaccination cards on there, we were going straight through it. We didn't even have to stop. But the other path went to another line with a waiting room, and there were all these tables there.
Station set up,
and they were waiting for the people to come in, and I guess they were going to help them do it or look at their vaccination cards and do it there or proclaim their quarantine status. So they were ready for it. There was a lot of people there.
They were definitely set up.
Yeah, but we breezed right through that because, of course, we'd done our due diligence and we were ready.
Well, one last important thing before we move on about this is adults each need to have their own QR code. So each person needs to make their own login account and go through the process. Children, I believe under 18, can be attached to
a parent. Now that comes into play, especially in the second part. So we've passed the health part. The second part is customs. And the way it used to work for customs is you would just have one card for the family and then you would all go through together. But now each person has to go up to a machine and do their customs where they actually put in their passport and it takes a picture. And then it knew because we were on the website. So it just gave me a green check and we went through it. It was super fast. But what the difference was, because I thought I didn't have to do it because it always had been family before. So I thought Jim and I could do it together, but we could not. And so that was a difference. It was still fast, but we had to do it separately.
Yeah. So that's the 3 stages as you're entering. The first one is health. The second one is immigration, and that's one card. And then the third one is customs, and that's a separate card. And each one of those gave us QR codes, and they're color coded. And as you're walking through the airport, going through the different sections, they've got the color code, and they had an army of people there ready to help and guide everybody. They at least spoke English.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about other languages, but
it really wasn't that bad. To get from the very departing of the plane all the way through this madhouse of stages down to pick up our luggage took us, I'd say, an hour and 15 minutes?
Yeah.
And we were ready ahead of time. And when we got down to the luggage area, there was almost no one from our flight down there. So they were still trying to figure out how to get through all these stages. We have no idea what happened to them. And we don't want to scare you. It wasn't really difficult. It was tedious. It's tedious to get on the website and do everything you need to do, but do it and make sure that you're ready for it when you get there. And it'll save you time once you're there, even though I think it's still new and it was still taking longer than we would want it to take, of course.
Yeah. That's my biggest advice for planning to get to Japan is to get to that website and fill out all 3 stages. I think some people just did the health, thinking that's all they really needed. And
who knows? We don't know. You're just guessing.
But do them all, and you'll be ready. And we also, a final caveat on that, we came in through Narita. Maybe Haneda is a little bit different.
It didn't sound like it. The kids went through Haneda. Didn't the kids come in on Haneda? It really wasn't that bad, especially after we got on the Wi-Fi and showed them that we had done the whole thing. They sent us right through. It's just something to know about and be ready for, and know that you need to have a COVID vaccine and 2 boosters in order to not quarantine.
Yeah. And okay, so other things to think about in the planning process or the packing process. Japan has very seasonal weather. So be aware of what the weather is going to be. And when it's wet there, when it rains there, it rains. We're talking typhoon season from August through December, and you're going to need to be ready for that. So I like to have those little pouches that hold a emergency rain poncho in them that hopefully you'll never have to open. But if you do, you have it, and you're going to need it.
And it rains all year long for different reasons, but some rain can be, of course, much harder than others. In other words, be ready for the seasons. The winter, like we were there during winter, not the coldest part of winter. It doesn't really snow at all in the Tokyo area, especially on the Kanto Plain, until after Christmas, if it does at all. And it's very little because you're on the water. More inland, of course, in Hakuba and all the ski areas, in Nakano.
They hope it gets lots of snow.
Yeah, there's lots of snow. Well, they make snow if there's not, but there's always lots of snow. And so winter can be cold, but it's not that cold. So you want to dress in layers. And especially when you get to places, outside you might be cold because you need your jacket and your hat and your gloves. But then you get on the train and they've got the heat on and it's way hot. So you want to be able to not only unzip, but, maybe take that
remove
top layer
layer
off, especially for the kids, because there's nothing worse than a kid that's been cold and now they're too hot. I just hate that. So winter, be prepared for it to be kind of, warm here and cold there and warm here and cold there. And it's a little bit off and on. Spring and fall, I think the most thing you have to really worry about is the rain. It doesn't get too cold, but again, layering is not a bad idea. Bring a light jacket. And summers are my worst.
Oh, they're hot and humid.
Just don't like them.
The only thing that really works good in the summer for that humidity and the heat is like a small towel that you can get wet and wrap it around your neck.
Which you can buy those in Japan. Or another thing that works really good too is a portable fan. Those things people love, battery operated fan. And you will use it because it is that hot and that muggy.
Yeah. And of course, sunblock during that season is critical.
And so just know that you don't need tons and tons of clothes, but what you do need is A, to be able to layer. B, you need the best walking shoes you can find for the season. You are going to spend a lot of time going upstairs, downstairs, walking. You will more than get your steps for each day.
And really, what you need to consider when you're getting shoes for walking shoes in Japan is that those shoes need to be able to come off easily.
Right.
Because you're going to have to remove your shoes a lot going into temples, going to some restaurants, in your hotel even. Some hotels, you take your shoes off in the lobby.
And leave them down there.
And leave them there.
They give you lockers, but you still leave them there.
So you don't want good walking shoes that are hard to take off.
Yeah,
on and off.
with a lot of laces. And the other thing with that is taking your shoes off. You don't want holey socks. This might be a time when you want to go out and buy yourself
some nice socks,
some good socks. And, you know, in the summer, even if you're wearing hiking shoes or something, when you take off your sandals to say go into a temple, you just can have in your pocket a pair of those light socks and put those on. You will see an occasional tourist go through there barefoot, but the Japanese are not really barefoot people. They're going to have socks on, and so that means they would like you to have socks on as well.
Well, in good news, socks are a nice souvenir that you can pick up all over Japan. They have a lot of cool socks.
From the 100 yen store to mega department stores, you can find socks everywhere.
Characters and anime, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so I mean, the other thing to do with planning is what you need to delve into our website for, where to go and what to do and some itineraries and things like that. But just overall packing, I think those are the best tips that we can give you. The other best tip is you really don't want to overpack. You really don't want to overpack because you are going to be taking public transportation, and when we're going to do a whole podcast on public transportation because there's that much to tell you about it. But the rule here is you don't want to have too much luggage. It's a pain and you will regret it.
Right. Oh, also in the planning process, you might want to consider reservations and purchasing tickets.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Don't forget that.
We're going to talk a little bit about reservations.
Well, we can talk about it now.
Later, but let's do it now.
Yeah, let's talk about it now because I do agree with you. We as we said, we could not get reservations with the kids. We were a half an hour train ride away from them for an affordable hotel. We could have stayed closer if we wanted to pay, $500 a night, but we didn't want to do that.
Hotels can get very pricey in Tokyo.
And so you want to make reservations as soon as you have confirmed flights and you're building your itinerary. Things like Team Lab Planets,
or a lot of the attractions you need. All the
attractions you need tickets for. The hotels you need reservations for.
Disneyland.
Even if you're going to go on some of the trains and you want reserved tickets, you might want to make reservations for that, especially if you're using a JR pass or something. However, well, that's a whole nother podcast, but
which it is.
But if you do that route, if you go that route, you'll need reservations or in-night flights or in-country flights or whatever. So try to make all of those as early as you can, even for restaurants.
Yes.
When we're traveling through Japan, in the smaller cities, it's not such a big deal. But if there's some place you want to go and they accept reservations, make reservations
as early as you can.
As early as you can. A lot of restaurants, just like the States, don't take reservations, and you'll have to learn how to stand in line for that. And we'll talk about that when we're talking about eating. But for the most part, you want to make sure that you make as many reservations as you can. And just don't overbook yourself. Depending on what you're doing, make reservations for 2 activities a day and dinner. That's all you need at the most.
At most, right. And depending what the activity is, of course, it might be an all-day activity.
Yeah, depending at most.
But it's definitely part of the planning process.
I agree.
You really need to think about that as soon as you start thinking about going to Japan, what those attractions are you want. Can you do an online purchase for the tickets or in reservation? And if you can, do it.
Well, I can give you a couple of examples. We tried going to the Pokemon Cafe, which we've been to a couple of times before, and it was booked, I think, 3 months out. Mm-hmm. There's a new Ghibli amusement park, which would be amazing to go to, and we couldn't even touch tickets. I don't know how far out they are. So, like I said, as soon as you know when you're going, and you know there's something you don't want to miss, get your tickets, make your reservations.
Book it. That's right. Okay, so you've done all the planning. You've got some reservations. You've got tickets for the attractions you really want to go to.
You've made it through the paperwork gauntlet as from arriving at the airport, and you are out with your luggage.
So getting from the airports.
Well, no, the first thing you need to do while you're in your airport is you need to get your SIM cards and your Suica or Pasmo card.
Yes. So SIM cards for your phone, you can get a SIM card pretty cheap, like $5 a day. I think Japan's a little bit more expensive than a lot of Asian countries, but it's not bad. You can also rent a phone, or you can rent a
portable Wi-Fi
device that you pick up at the airport and then drop off at the airport. If you've got a few people in your party and they have all got phones already, a portable Wi-Fi is not a bad way to go, because everybody can just connect to that. And as long as you're together, you'll always have a data point.
Yeah, it worked really well for us. So a lot of times we traveled in Japan with 5 adults. And so one person has the SIM card and the rest just go and the portable Wi-Fi on their phone, and everybody else just connects to that portable Wi-Fi. It works fantastic.
It works good. And the reality is there's also a lot of free Wi-Fi
once you get
Tokyo.
Somewhere in the hotels,
so
in the malls.
You'll find it pretty regularly. Yeah. So I think you could get by without a SIM, but
nowadays it's so hard to tell people that though, because we are so connected to our phones.
Well, and there's so much that you do, like those tickets that you reserved or purchased ahead of time. Those are on your phone. So you've got to be able to have access to those when you get to the attractions you're going to. We use Google Fi, and Google Fi works really good for us. It's international. It's not too expensive. I really like it. And there's a few services, cell phone services in the States that have international plans that are really affordable. So check in with your carrier. You may not need a SIM. Like we didn't need a SIM when we got there.
But
we just switched over to our Google Fi, and it worked great. No problems throughout the country. So yes, you do that in the airport. They'll help you through it. There's even, of course, it's Japan, right?
There's even vending machines.
To get your SIM card. So
it's super easy.
And
okay, so good. Internet taken care of. The next thing you want to make sure you get is your public transportation cash card.
Yeah.
And there's 2 kinds. There's one that's called a Suica, Suica, and there's one that's called a Pasmo, Passmo. And they're very particular to different places, but you can use them interchangeably as well. So it's a little confusing, but not confusing. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
If you live here, then you'll probably know which one works better for your area. But for just visiting Japan, you can use either Pasmo or Suica, and you can pretty much use them anywhere. I think Suica is a little bit more
widely accepted outside of transportation areas.
Yeah, outside of because the other thing that you can do with these cash cards, and what a lot of the Japanese do, is they'll buy them for their kids, and they can go to the convenience store and buy snacks, or they can use, like they have workstations outside train stations if you want to connect.
Vending machines.
You can put them in vending machines, so you can use them for a lot of stuff. And what's nice about that is, then you're not collecting a bunch of change. Because you collect a lot of change in Japan, and you need to make sure that it's readily available. And even if something costs 1,200 yen, don't grab a bill. Try and get it with change.
That's right.
Because
that change adds up to a lot of money very quickly.
Really
so
quickly.
It's easy to go on a trip to Japan, come back with a little, what you think is a little pile of change. It's actually around $30 or $40 or $50 worth of change.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good tip.
You can't change that over. You just need to save it for your next trip to Japan. So you can use it in like a gashapon machine or a vending machine or whatever. But
at the airport, there was a whole row of gachapons with a sign on it that said, spend your
coins now.
You won't be able to use them anywhere else.
I thought that was smart for the gashapon people.
Yeah. And they're really easy. They're really easy to get. It can be intimidating when you first walk up to the bank of machines where you're going to buy a card or a ticket. You can get around everywhere with tickets. I don't recommend that. It's very
we'll have a
challenging.
picture on the website. But if you look at this board and you see these machines, it looks like, first of all, that there's not much in English. So that's intimidating to begin with. But let us put your mind at ease. Every machine speaks English.
Yes.
So the very first thing you do is pick the English option and it will walk you through it. So it's really not as scary as it initially looks.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's easy to top off the cards. They have fare adjustment machines if you're worried about it counting down and you not having enough, or if
you arrive at your
right
destination.
next to the exit gate, there's going to be a fare adjustment machine that you can top it off. It's really easy to use. I suggest you buy one and you put 5,000 yen at least on it to begin with, depending on how long you're going to be in Tokyo, because even though that's like $45, you will go through that pretty quickly if you're using public transportation.
Especially if you're arriving in Narita. To get into Tokyo, it's probably going to cost you about $1,000 right away. So you have to have that ready. And then every subway ride you take is around 200. The bus rides are around 200. We'll talk about transportation, but
we're going, like we said, we'll have a whole podcast on it. But the important thing here is you want to start off right away.
Get it when you first get to the airport.
Yes, because you're going to have lots of opportunities to use it. Like we said, maybe at a vending machine, definitely for public transportation, and maybe at a convenience store. So it really will make your life a lot easier.
It really does.
And you don't need to buy yen before you get to the country. There are plenty of ATMs everywhere in the airport, too, to get your money. You don't even need to use a money exchanger unless you have some foreign currency that you're trying to get rid of, and you can get it in yen. For the most part, I just suggest getting your money out of an ATM.
One last thing about airports. I like to say it goes without saying, but it should be said anyway. There are 2 airports in Tokyo, Narita and Haneda. It makes a big difference. If you're flying to somewhere else in Japan, you really want to be careful when you're booking your flights that you don't fly into one of them and then have a connecting flight out of the other one. And that's very common.
It is common.
Airlines will do that. And make it look like it's one flight.
Yes. So check your itinerary carefully. And if it does do that, I would change it personally.
Yeah. You can do it. You can get between the airports. It takes
at
few hours.
At least 2 hours.
And that's not even talking about the airport time itself.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
a hassle. Don't do it.
Not doing that. And I also recommend, if you have a choice on flights, flying to Haneda. It's closer to Tokyo. It's a smaller airport. It's easier to get around. It just works better. Okay, so you've gotten to the airport. You're in the city.
Now we're going to talk about some general tips.
You're on the train. So and actually you'll see this in the airport, but definitely on the train. If you didn't notice in the airport, we should talk a little bit about masks, because this is the post-pandemic era. But to be honest, masks have always been part of the Japanese culture.
Well, and you should have been wearing your mask all along for this. But yeah, masks have always been when we lived in Japan, this was before the pandemic hit, because we moved out of Japan, if you remember correctly, June of 2020, right. Actually. So the pandemic had hit, but even before the pandemic, the way the Japanese would use masks are, if they were sick, they never want to inconvenience anyone else, which is not a way that Americans really think, I have to be honest. But it is a way they think, and you will see evidence of this in just about everything that you do. But the mask situation is that they didn't want to make you sick. They didn't want to expose you to their germs. So they would wear a mask to keep it to themselves. And you rarely saw a sick Japanese person. And you definitely never saw anyone feeling unwell without a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And now today, as soon as you arrive in Japan, every single Japanese person, except maybe little tiny babies, bar none, is wearing a mask for everything, inside, outside, everywhere. Yeah. The only time you can take your mask off is when you get into a restaurant and you're seated and it's just you and your party, then you can take your mask off and leave it off.
But you put it on again when the waiter comes and it's time to order.
Yeah. And even in coffee shops, like in Starbucks, we were just in a Starbucks and every Starbucks table had wear a mask sign on it. Mm-hmm. So they were expecting you to wear a mask whenever you weren't actually eating or drinking, because a lot of people go to Starbucks to
Just
work
hang out.
on their computer or
Right.
whatever. I'm going to say I didn't see the Japanese follow that as closely, but it was probably 50-50. You would look around the room and 50% of the people definitely still had their masks on. So it's hard to say.
Definitely more than you would see in other countries.
Oh,
for sure.
I mean, without a doubt.
And outside. Yes.
So the point here is, before we went, I read about this, and I read so many Westerners saying, well, it's not necessarily a rule that you wear your mask. It's up to you. But all the Japanese are wearing them. So maybe you should wear them. But we didn't wear ours all the time. I'm going to tell you, we wore ours all the time. Even our 2.5-year-old grandson wore his all the time. You can do it. It's not uncomfortable. And
you
people
should.
aren't going to look at you and think, look at that Westerner who doesn't care about our culture. I know I'm probably going to get some shade for this, but I'm telling you, if you're going to Japan, it is a mask wearing culture. And until that pandemic is really over, you need to wear a mask. And by the way, there are some places it is definitely a rule you will wear them. And that is like all the venues, Teamland Planets, when you go to the animal cafes. In malls, I would say that it was, like I said, everybody wore them all
Everybody's
the
wearing
time.
them. It's not mandatory.
It may not be mandatory, but you need to wear them. So get ready to wear your mask or wait a while before you go.
And public transportation for sure. It's pretty much mandatory. There were signs on the buses. I don't think anyone would give you a ticket or kick you out the bus. But there's a sign and you should wear it.
All right. So the next thing that people need to know about are public restrooms.
Oh, yeah. Everyone always wants to know about that.
First of all, I got to say, for the most part, every once in a while you find a stinky one. But for the most part, I think Japanese restrooms are probably the cleanest in the world. They always have Western and Eastern toilets. So you can get a squatty potty if you want one.
Right.
But they're clearly marked on the outside of the door. So you don't have to use a squatty potty. You can definitely use a Western toilet. And every Western toilet, I'm trying to think of an exception and I cannot think of one, will have the bidet sort of panel
some button panel somewhere that you
where you can
may or may not need to use to go to the bathroom.
And the most important button there is usually blue, and that's the flush button.
Yeah. And the off button.
Well, only if you push a button, another button.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's very easy to just look at it and go, oh, push a button. And then next thing you know, you're getting squirted somewhere. But you better know what the off button is.
It's got pictures. I don't think anybody's going to push a button that doesn't need to push a button. You
just got to be aware.
Whatever. Anyway, the thing you need to know about public restrooms are that there's always soap and almost always warm water. Not always warm water, but almost always. But they don't have hand towels. They don't believe in wasting that energy.
Right.
That
paper towels.
So a lot of Japanese either will use the air dryer, which there's almost always an air dryer, or they have their own little towel that they carry with them.
Or there's nothing in the bathroom for you. You have to have your own. Exactly.
Yeah. But public restrooms are plentiful and they're easy to find. And going along with that, in malls and places like that, there are also places called baby rooms, and you can go to the baby room and they are sweet. They have a place to do breastfeeding if you need to breastfeed. There's a microwave. You can heat up a baby's bottle or whatever. There's a vending machine. You can feed your kids. There's a couple of tables. We've got a place, even if your kid is just, a little cranky, it's a good idea to go into the baby room, grab them a little snack and just sort of take them out of that environment and makes them feel better. So it's a wonderful thing. And if you have little kids, you might want to pay attention to that. Yeah. Along those same lines, a lot of the malls will also allow you to have free strollers. Mm-hmm. So we were in the Sun City Mall, and they have free strollers there. There was nobody to give it to you. You just sort of sign it out.
Pulled it out of the line and used it and then returned it when you were done.
Yeah. And that was a lifesaver as well because our little one was getting pretty cranky.
He's pretty good at walking around on his own. But yeah, it was warm and that's a lot of walking when you're talking about malls.
And we were there all day pretty much.
Yeah. There's so much to do there.
Well, we'll talk about that on our Tokyo post.
Yeah. All right. Well, the other thing that you're going to find in that baby room is a trash can, which, let me tell you, finding a trash can in Japan can be very, very difficult. So you really want to keep an eye on it. The first thing is, of course, don't go far away from somewhere where you got food, because they'll take your trash. But the other thing is, if you've got trash, you hang on to it. You don't set it down somewhere. You're not going to find a trash can in many places. So you hang on to it until you do find one.
And so this comes into play, like if you're going to buy something and take it with you, make sure it's not too sticky or too messy,
right.
Because when you're finished with it, you're going to need to put it in your backpack and carry it around with you until you're done. You can use a Ziploc bag that might work for that, or one of the plastic bags that you've gotten at a store, a little one. You'll get plenty of those. So that works. But if you're at a convenience store, there's trash cans there. Occasionally you'll see trash cans in a park.
Occasionally.
Because occasionally, we can't promise, because people will go there for picnics and stuff. And you will see them in train stations. Again, I'm going to say occasionally, because they're not everywhere. So just plan on carrying your trash out with you until you get to your hotel or to some place that
I was going to say, there's a lot of times where a couple cans came home to the hotel with me.
Yeah. Also, some of the vending machines will have, like, what I've seen them do is they'll have a vending machine, and right next to it, they'll have a can that only takes the bottle shape. It won't like open up to take all your trash, but it'll take the bottle shape, because
and the ones that they sell. So if you've got an odd shaped bottle, it might not fit in that receptacle.
Yeah. But anyway, just be aware that trash cans are not as prolific as you would like, or I would like, or anyone would like. Another thing you might find surprising
is the smoking areas.
How many Japanese people smoke?
Yeah.
Many.
Shocking. Now, of course, there's a lot of e-cigarettes and that stuff. We don't smoke, but you still notice this. And like everything else that they do, they're trying to be as polite and considerate as possible. So there are smoking areas. You won't see people walking down the street smoking, or smoking on transportation.
Well, that's it.
Restaurants.
In the States, you can just go outside, right? And maybe go around the building or whatever. No. That is not how it works in Japan.
There are specific places that are a little bit away from the sidewalk, maybe a section of a parking lot, that are specifically set up for smokers, or maybe even a room that's got super good ventilation at the back. There was one coffee shop we were in that has a smoking room. And in fact, you were sitting back to that wall. We never even really knew it was a smoking room.
I noticed it one time when the door opened, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very convenient for those of us that don't smoke. For those of you that do smoke, it's a little less convenient.
You have to find it.
This is the whole mask thing over again. The Japanese psyche is growing up being considerate to others, taking the whole team into account, not just the self. So that's why they do this. And it's very important. And we have some pictures on the website, so you can go there and see what it looks like.
That is something to consider too for hotels. When you're booking your hotel, which we can talk about next, there are still some smoking rooms in hotels. So be very careful when you're booking that you look for, if you're not a smoker, that you look for a non-smoking room.
And vice versa. If you are a smoker, take a smoking room.
Take a smoking room, because you also don't want to be smoking in a room that's a non-smoking. You'll incur a heavy fine or set off the alarms.
So when you're planning your trip to Japan and you're looking for hotels, here are a few things that I think are very important to keep in mind. We have a whole article on our site about hotels and accommodations in Japan, and I think you should take a look at it, because it definitely describes all the different types of hotels that there are, from the capsule hotel all the way to the ryokan. The capsule hotel being the cheapest, and the ryokan being the traditional Japanese inn that is usually at least $200 a night per person. Very expensive. Worth it to do at least once, but expensive. I think that most people are looking for a good deal. And if you're a traveler like us, what works for us are basically business hotels, because they have beds large enough for 2 people, 3 if you have a 2.5-year-old. But really, if you have larger kids, you're going to either need 2 rooms or a different kind of hotel because they're not big enough for that.
Yeah,
Because there's no
rooms.
there's no walking around the room. There's very little space. But they do come with bathrooms, and the bathrooms are nice. And one thing that's really nice about hotels is they have all the toiletries included. Some places, depending on the hotel, will have this huge table full of toiletries that you can choose from.
Buffet.
Yeah.
Where you just go through and say, okay, I'm going to need a couple of earbuds. I'm going to need a shaver, a toothbrush. I forgot my comb. I don't have a comb. And
they always have, body soap and conditioner and shampoo.
Yeah,
always
that's in the room.
It's always there. So that's stuff you don't have to worry about. But the most important thing about a hotel is you want to make sure you're near a train station.
Yes.
Because you're going to be riding a lot of trains, really near a train station. And the other thing is to be near a convenience store. Nowadays, it used to be, travel's changed so much since we started traveling. It used to be that breakfasts were always included in a hotel. That is not the case anymore, and Japan is no different. You need to pay extra for the breakfast, and they're expensive.
Yeah.
I think the hotel we were staying in, wasn't it
it's going to be 2,000
yen a person?
That's
$20. That's $18 a person for breakfast. I don't eat $18 worth of breakfast. Do you? So what we did is we were right near a 7-Eleven, and there's tons of convenience stores. So the chances are you'll be pretty close to one. And Jim would get up and he would go and get me a sandwich. He would get me an egg salad sandwich, and he would usually get a tonkatsu sandwich, a meat sandwich. But they also have, of course, yogurt, and they have some of the yogurt that even has a little muesli on top that you can put in there.
Yeah.
They have juices,
pancakes.
Yeah, they have packaged pancakes. They have some hot foods, which are more for Americans, they're not breakfast foods, but I mean,
it's
push comes to shove, it's food, right?
Right.
And you can eat it. So that's what we did for breakfast, and we only paid because of that, a couple hundred yen for a onigiris, the triangle rice things. We love the tuna fish and salmon ones. Those, you're paying anywhere from 150 yen to 250 yen, so you can have a whole breakfast that way that has coffees and hot drinks and everything for at the most 500 yen a person, not 2,000 yen a person. Yeah. So take that into consideration as well.
Even if you went to a coffee shop and had a coffee and a pastry, you're still not going to spend as much as what you would have for a
but you would spend about half as much.
Come
probably
closer, right? So that's why we prefer the konbinis, because they're close, they're convenient, and that egg salad is really good. And
the egg salad is amazing.
Sandwich is even better. So you can't go wrong. And you can also get a hot coffee there, and either a canned coffee, just like you would get out of a vending machine, or an actual drip coffee. Not a lot of choices as far as cappuccino or that sort
you
of
would
thing.
Want to go to a coffee shop for that.
For that, you'd want a coffee shop, but it is there, so you can still get your coffee. Which is another thing about hotels. You'll usually get a green tea packet or something like that, and they almost always have a water kettle, so you can heat up water. If you think ahead of time, and when you're packing, if you don't mind it, you can always bring your own instant coffee.
Whatever you prefer.
Or
cocoa.
And you'll have that, or cocoa. You'll have that in the room already, so you won't have to worry about it. That's probably a really good tip for people who like their coffee in the morning.
The other thing is that if you're like Jim, I'm not so much this person, but if you're like Jim and our friends that we travel with, then you want to get back to the hotel and relax a little bit and have a beer. And I have yet to go to a Japanese hotel that did not have a beer vending machine.
Right.
So you don't have to worry. Of course, have it while you're out and you're having a good time and everything. But if you like to come back and relax with a beer, know that there will be a vending machine. Well, for snacks and stuff too, but that you can get a beer in.
And even if there isn't, that convenience store that's right there across the street is going to have one or two to choose from. So that's another good reason to have the convenience store right nearby.
So the two things to make sure that it's near train station and convenience store.
Yes.
Period.
And some hotels will have laundry. Some won't.
Most will
not. If they do have laundry, it's probably going to be pretty pricey. You can find laundromats throughout Tokyo. If you just do a Google search for a coin-op laundromat, you'll find them. I did laundry in one. I did one load. It cost about 1,000 yen, which is like $8 now currently. So it's not cheap.
No matter what.
But it's definitely cheaper than what most hotels will charge for laundry.
Yeah.
And easy to do. It was a bit of a challenge because I hadn't really used those ones before. So I had to figure out, it was a lot of using my phone for Google Translate, taking pictures of the instructions and the different parts. What I found was that the machines all did an automatic injection of laundry soap. So I had brought my own laundry soap thinking you would need it, but I didn't. All of the machines there had, you just put the money in, you figured out the program you wanted, and they all had soap and even fabric softener if you chose it. So that was kind of cool.
That's really
unexpected.
Cool. I'm kind of glad you brought up Google Translate. Google, I mean, one of the things that you don't have to worry about when going to Japan is having people speak English. Most people speak some English, and they're going to tell you they don't. I've been reading online where people have said their English is not. If you walk up to someone and say, "Do you speak English?" They're going to say no.
A lot of times they'll say no.
And they speak English wonderfully. And the reason they're doing this is not because they don't want to talk to you, but because they're a little embarrassed that their English is not good enough, and that in their mind, they think it's not good enough. But it is always good enough to answer your question about how to get somewhere, or where the toilet is, or, something like that, or which train to take to go to Kawasaki or something. Honestly, I mean, please don't start the conversation with, "Do you speak English?" Do not do it. Just ask the question. And if they look at you sideways and they maybe do not understand, just type it into Google Translate and it'll translate it, and they can read it. And they will respond that way too. You really don't have to worry about getting around. It's pretty simple.
Well, and the photo option is perfect for when you do need to figure out instructions and there's not an English translation right there.
But which is not very often, because
nowadays there's
everywhere we went, we seem to have I saw lots of English.
Yes.
But you're right. I mean, there's still going to be times when, of course, that
menus
just makes
especially
sense. Especially menus. The problem with menus are if they're handwritten, it doesn't like handwritten.
Nope.
Script. But if it's printed in any way, they can usually pick it up. I still think you should learn a little Japanese. I just think it's polite.
Even like you said, when you go up to a stranger, you don't want to start out with, "Do you speak English?" Instead, you want to start out with, Hello, excuse me. And if you do that in Japanese, even though you don't continue the conversation in Japanese, you're going to get a lot better of a response.
So, most people know konnichiwa is good day. And konbanwa is good evening, which you can use coming or going.
Ohayo gozaimasu is good morning.
Ohayo gozaimasu is good morning. That's right. And, you can use, if you only want to learn one, konnichiwa would probably be the best one to learn.
It's interchangeable all day, even though it's not the best one, it would work.
So say hello. And then if you need something, you can say, like sumimasen, excuse me. And sumimasen works in a restaurant. You can say sumimasen when you want to call the waiter. Or if you're in a train, you can ask the conductor, or outside the train asking for directions. Starting it with sumimasen is just a quick way for them to know that you actually need their help.
That's right. And of course, thank you is important.
But everybody knows how to say thank you, because there was a good...
Thanks to the Sticks song, Mr.
Thanks
Roboto.
to the Sticks. Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Hey, that's my job. I'm supposed to sing.
You do it.
No, you just did.
That's for the karaoke bar, right?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so there's a few other words which I think are really good words to know. First of all, you're going to be eating out at a lot of restaurants. So... you can take them outside and point at the food. You can Google Translate the menu, like we said. But you know what you can't do? You can't do anything for the check. So you need to know how to ask for the check. And the word for check is o, which means it was really just an honorific. Kaike. O kaike. So you would say, "Okaike onegai shimasu." Onegai shimasu just means please in a very polite way. And you don't know anybody. So it's good for you to always use onegai shimasu. They're going to love you for that.
Yes.
So you can say, if you wanted water, mizu onegai shimasu. Or even if you forget the O, you just say mizu for water, onegai shimasu. And they will love you for it. So okaike is getting the bill. And if you want to split it with the person you're traveling with, you just say betsu bets. Betsu bets. It's actually spelled betsu betsu, but they never say the last U. They just say bets. So betsu bets. And then a couple other kind of cool words that are just good for catching someone's eye and saying a good word is you can say sugoi, which means, wow, that's so cool. Sugoi. Or if there's a little kid. Okay, so here's a word that's a little confusing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know the word kawaii means cute, but it's kawaii. So it's always nice to pronounce that last E, kind of like kawaii.
Yeah.
Because if you say kawaii, that means scary. So you don't want to call a little kid scary.
No.
You don't want to say kawaii. You want to say kawaii and
sure it's
really
clear.
pronunciate that E. Kawaii, kawaii. And they will love you for it.
My favorite is honto.
Honto ne?
Really? Is that true? That's what that means. That's a good one.
That is a good one. And that just will get them sort of
Or
chuckling.
Like if you need it repeated or something like that, then that would work for that too. So those are good words. Counting, of course. Ichi-ni-san. Those are good. The counting words. The problem with counting words, what I find is they have a different system of counting words for almost everything. So if you're telling a number of people,
whether it's a cylindrical object or a flat object or
people or drinks or fruits
or years.
Yes.
Like how old you are.
But the basic numbers will get your point across.
Yeah. Also, if you know the first three, ichi, ni, san, you can, if someone asks you to take their photo, you can say ichi ni san, and they will like that. Click. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The other, I think, most important word you might want to learn is gomenasai. And gomenasai means I'm sorry or excuse me. Mm-hmm. So you've bumped someone, you can say gomenasai. Or if you're trying to get off the train and you want people to move, you can say gomenasai, and they'll move out of your way for you. They're very polite, but they don't know, so you need to say something. And my favorite Japanese word, can you guess it? Daijobu.
Daijobu.
Yes. Daijobu just means okay. So you can say Daijobu desu ka? Or honto?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, Daijobu. And you can ask it as a question, Daijobu? Or you can say it just like in English. Okay, Daijobu. Those, I don't know how many words that we just gave you, but those are very simple things. Just make up some little flashcards and learn those on your plane on your way over there. And they're just enough to make people think that you've tried. And that's important, right?
Goes a long way.
It goes a long way. And people just will love you for it. They won't want you. Believe me, I speak a little Japanese and I try to get by, and they actually are very good about it. But conversationally, it gets to the point where it's like, oh gosh, let's just do this in English, lady, because it's just easier. But if you know a few words, it'll make them super, super, super happy.
How about a few, not necessarily emergency situations, but we should talk a little bit about pharmacies, getting a prescription filled if you've lost your pills or something like that.
Well, I think that's important. Remember, when we were in Japan just a week ago, Aster, our baby doll, had a horrible cough. Mm-hmm. And we did get him to wear a mask, but we just wanted that cough to go away. He couldn't sleep. So we were like, how are we going to explain at the pharmacy
what he needs?
Google
Translate, 2-year-old coughing.
Just the keywords.
Yep.
Don't put too much stuff in there. You need to have the age, especially for a child. If you're an adult, you don't even need that. Important. You can just say cough and have that translated. But if it's for a child, of course, put the age in there because they need to know. And it worked perfectly. We put it in, showed it to her. She gave us the thing, showed us how much to give him, and we were done. And the thing about pharmacies there's always one open somewhere relatively close to you. Always. It's a law.
So you can find it either by going to the nearest pharmacy. If it's not open, there's usually a sign on it that says where to find one that is. And also I found that when we needed something else, I think we were looking for a Tylenol. They didn't have it at the pharmacy we stopped in at, but they knew which pharmacy did, and they sent us to that in that direction. And that worked out really good. And the other thing about pharmacies is most pharmacists speak pretty good English. So you're not going to have too much trouble. And if you forgot a prescription or you lost it or something like that, you need a refill. We always take pictures of our
pill bottle,
our pill bottles before we go with the prescription on the label so that we have that. If you've got a bottle, you can bring that or that picture. That's going to help a lot with getting something. And even if it's something that is maybe normally required a prescription, they will at least give you
a day or
a
two,
small supply to get you going, and then let you know where you can contact a doctor for a prescription. So they're pretty helpful that way. Now, of course, like heavy narcotics, that sort of thing, opioids or whatnot, I don't know that they would give you that. But for like your blood pressure or your high cholesterol medicine, that sort of thing, we've been able to get those.
That's really important to know about pharmacies. And the other thing is just a little etiquette with photography. It's a Japanese law that cell phones are supposed to have the sound on when you're taking a picture. You know how it goes click, or I don't know, I can't make the sound, whoosh, whatever it is.
Like a shutter.
But a lot of American phones, a lot of Western phones don't have that. So just make sure that you're not trying to be too secretive, that the whole law is built because people want to know when they're having their picture taken. Just ask them. The Japanese love having their pictures taken. I have been turned down once or twice in the 5+ years that I've lived in Japan, and, you know, all the many, many, many times I've visited. However, I mean, you're going to find that picture again, but we have had so many pictures where I ask if I can take a little girl's picture in her kimono. Yes. I ask if we can take a whole family picture, and they're like, yes. So they're very good about it. Very, very, very good about it. And they love having their picture taken, but be above board. Don't be, when you get sneaky, then they don't trust you because,
and you can run into a lot of trouble,
and you could run into trouble for it. So just keep that in mind. And photography, they will tell you, you know, Japan's a country of rules, and they want you to follow the rules. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
They don't have excessive rules, but they have rules that mean something to them. So maybe just follow the rules and you'll be fine. I think that is a good start. It's not everything we have to tell you.
No, there's more. We should definitely talk about, you know, in the restaurant, things to eat,
Japanese eating etiquette, restaurant etiquette.
And there's so much about transportation to talk about, not just the act of using it, but how you behave while you're on transportation.
Exactly.
There's so much more to talk about. So that'll be a separate podcast. I think we'll save those
for probably 2 other podcasts. But so stay tuned. We have a lot more to tell you. I hope you found this helpful. It's a lot of information, but luckily it's pretty much detailed out on the page that is linked on here. So just go to our website and you don't have to worry about trying to take notes from our voices.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.